Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Operation Battle Ready. Today we are reviewing the Riotgrrl Master Series paints. Yeah.
Yes, made by Riotgrrl Minis. The way we're going to do reviews, we're going to do honest reviews. Where if there's things we aren't cool with, we're going to tell you all about them.
Yeah. And we're going to be totally honest. We will have a pro and cons list, and we are not going to sugarcoat anything.
And with that, we're going to get into our review of the Riotgrrl Master Series paints.
Yeah.
I'm going to start off by saying I do like them, but we're going to start with the cons list, and then we'll come around to the pros. So we're going to drag you right into Mordor, but don't worry, we'll bring you back to the Shire by the end.
Yeah, we'll be okay.
So one of the first things to understand about Riotgrrl Master Series paints, they are a thin-bodied, heavy pigment load paint. I don't know why they're so different from every other paint. I don't know what goes into the manufacturing to make it like it is. But it's got a lot of features and a few bugs. It is quick drying. It doesn't give you a lot of working time compared to other acrylics. Like you can leave out Vallejo paint on your wet palette for a week and it'll be fine.
Riotgrrl will dry out in a couple of hours.
Yeah.
If you're lucky, sometimes
sitting
faster.
on a wet palette.
Yeah, right.
It's rough through an airbrush. I tell you, I've ruined a couple airbrushes with Riotgrrl. I don't think I've ever pushed a whole cup of Riotgrrl out through an airbrush without swearing.
Clogging, yeah.
Clogging, having to take the thing apart. I don't know if I'm using the wrong additives. I tried every one I could find. Distilled water up through official thinners, and nothing
ever worked.
Nothing helped.
The pigment itself is too big. Like it's just.
I don't know what they're using. It's not just matte medium. I don't know what they're using as a binder. But it's pretty unfriendly to every airbrush I've ever tried to push it through.
Definitely not recommended. Now, also with it being such a thin-bodied paint, it's a great thing about it because it has a lot of viscosity. It's really great to use. You don't need a lot of water to thin it out right away. However, using it on a wet palette, be super careful. You don't want a lot of water in your wet palette because it's already so runny. If it hits a little water, it's just going to bleed everywhere and it's going to cause a huge mess. I've had, even just this past week, was making my little gradient on my wet palette, and I saw it before my eyes just become one giant color. And I was like, oh, wow, I forgot how much that likes to run. It can be kind of stressful. It can waste paints.
Another interesting feature of Riotgrrl's paints are the nozzles, designed by the devil. They're made to clog. I don't know. I've taken one apart and rinsed it out to see how it's constructed on the inside.
It's very weird.
It doesn't look like it's made to help paint flow, though.
Yeah, it's not a single hole. There's 3 or 4 different compartments off of it that goes through. And if even one of those parts is clogged with old paint, it clogs the whole system.
I remember
it's really bad.
Reaper's a quick drying paint, so that will happen.
All the time.
I like to have a little piece of brass rod or something nearby at all times so I can clean out the nozzles.
Just stab it right through.
And the other thing, do we have a good example here?
Well,
of the labels? Well, this
is a new label.
That's a new label.
So see, very easy, legible, pretty, white. This one I've had for less than a year.
Show them the other pink.
Oh yeah, and this one I've had for longer. So you can see the deterioration in time. This one you can kind of still see the writing, but it's starting to fade away. This one just there's nothing there anymore. It's just a mess. And what's crazy is this is how it starts. And this is like in a year, and it's kind of crazy.
Yeah, so I don't know what they make their labels out of. Receipts.
They do look like receipts.
That rubs off and it's a problem. It's a problem when you own 70 some odd Reaper paints, and one shade of off purple doesn't have its label anymore.
Yeah.
You don't know what you got to replace. You got to, it's
search through their menu, figure it out.
Yeah. So sometimes, like right away when it starts to fade, I'll write on there with a Sharpie marker. Yeah, it would be great. Or maybe next I'll start putting tape around the labels right away to preserve them. So yeah, that's a problem, which leads to my least favorite aspect of the Reaper Master series.
And that's like they like to discontinue their colors. Now, I don't know why they discontinue specific colors. I don't know if they just don't sell that well or
make less.
Yeah, maybe make less. I don't know what it is. Why not just
make less of that?
Yeah, just make less and then sell. I don't know. But they like to discontinue a lot of really popular colors. And then they also what they'll like to do is if you order from them, like they'll give you like a little sample paint, which is nice, whatever. But these sample paints are not like for sale, like outside of their stuff. So there was this really awesome, I don't even know if you can see that, like awesome, very light pink that they did. That is just the perfect triad with the punk rock and cotton candy pink. And when I went to the Reaper booth at Adepticon, I was like, hey, do you guys sell this or whatever? They're like, oh, well, that's a discontinued paint. We give it out as samples. We don't sell it. And I'm just like, well, that's great, but you gave me this awesome paint now that when it's gone, I can't use again. Oh.
They also had a bunch of great colors. They had a license for the line Heavy Gear. And so they had a range of their colors that were, named for things in Heavy Gear. And they I don't know how the license ended, but it ended. And rather than just relabel those colors are all gone.
Yeah.
So
never to be found again.
If you were, counting on those colors to exist for a color scheme for a large 40K army, yeah, you might want to double check to make sure that it's in the current line before you commit.
Definitely.
And I think that's all the bad stuff.
All the cons. Yeah, I mean, yeah, basically.
Yeah. So now we can discuss why to even bother with all of that annoyance.
Well, why would you bother? Well, we'll tell you.
Well, Angelina brought up the heavy pigment load, and I mentioned before the binder. I don't know what they're using, but when you put this stuff out on a palette, it's like painting with liquid silk. It's amazing, and their color range.
Oh, the color range is fantastic.
They have some of the most beautiful colors I've ever seen in model paint.
They're one of the only paint companies that has the best and only real hot pink out there. This is the only one I can find at all. So please don't ever discontinue this.
Possibly the most important paint in my collection. By this time this video's up, some of you will see my test paint job for the Age of Sigmar Night Haunt. And the first thing I got asked was, oh my god, what colors did you use? All the Infinity models, all the glows I ever do, everything is based on this magnificent, perfect color. This is Reaper's Mint Green.
Perfection.
It's the most amazing, beautiful, brightest, non-pastel color I've ever seen on a palette. Cannot live without it. Reaper has now that there's not a triad for that. Reaper has what's called the triad system. I've got a triad here to give you an example. They have inside their Reaper Master Series line a number of triads. They're small sets of a shade, a base coat, and a highlight color. and they're great. They all go really well together when you use them together. Here's an example. This is, I'm trying to make sure I've got them in the order here. This is kind of this pastel, deeper purple range. Okay, and so there you see you got the dark tone, the mid tone, and the highlight. And a lot of people feel confined by those triads, but they're a tool. A lot of people feel confined by those triads, but they're a tool. I've often, where like in a traditional paint line, you might mix two colors. I've mixed two triads together.
Yeah.
You know, I've done my layered highlighting alternating between the dark of one and the dark of a second, then the mid-tone of the original triad and and onwards. And you get some really cool effects. Yeah, I cannot say enough about their range of colors and the tones they get. Anything else? Oh, also, I never paint with white. People say, how do you paint white? I say, I don't. I hate painting with white. The whitest color you've ever seen on any of my models is this right here, misty gray. Okay, and there's lots of pale grays out there that people have made, but misty is the best for duplicating white. You can't tell it's not white unless you lay down flat white right next to it.
Yeah, it's about as close as you're gonna get.
And if you want to get fancy, it's just off white enough that if you go and edge highlight it white, you'll get an effect out of it.
Oh yeah.
I mean, you'll be able to edge highlight white.
Sure.
But usually when I'm painting white, I kind of like that Stormtrooper vibe. And Misty Gray, unlike GW's Ulthuan Gray, Ulthuan is the same kind of tone, but there's a grayness to it, a flatness.
Yeah, it's a little bit more gray.
And Misty Gray is rich. It's cool.
Yeah, it is.
You know, it has a cool temperature to it.
Mm-hmm.
So that helps it play off as white. Where like an Ulthuan Gray is never gonna read as white.
No, it always comes off.
So yeah, I think in summation, there are some difficulties with using Reaper, but the payoff is more than enough to give this an A in my book as a paint range.
Absolutely. I mean, the pigmentation in it is just superb. Like, you can have a flat, matte black primer base, and you can take pretty much any color from the range, and it will cover it, and it will work. It's great. And it's super matte, which is another great thing. I don't like certain paints that give, like, this kind of weird sheen, like, to it, because it'll always kind of deflect your highlights on what you're doing if it's too much in your light. And it's perfectly matte, so it's really great for that.
Now, it's not as matte as scale color.
No, not quite as that. Scale color is a whole different level of matte.
Yeah, scale color, like, sucks light
dry.
in.
It's dry. That's how matte it is.
I'll often add a little matte medium to scale color just to
keep it less
liven
dry.
it up a little. Reaper, you can still use additives with it. You could increase the working time with using a little retarder. You can use a little bit of matte medium. It'll also make it softer if you want to do some blending.
Yes.
Really, the line is designed for layered highlighting, which is essentially how I paint. So it fits in real well for me. But
it is harder for blending.
All the blends on Angelina's Pink Nomads are done with Reaper paint.
So it is possible, but it is harder. It takes more work. It's a little bit more working, again, because of how fast it dries and stuff. With scale color, it's easier for me to kind of literally physically go through and blend it together, whereas on Reaper, you are having to work very fast or just figuring out a lot of different ways to layer several colors to give you that same effect. Otherwise, it'll dry.
Yeah, so if you're buying Reaper paints, you're not buying it for ease of use, and you're not necessarily buying it for their good bottles. I'm gonna cut all that out. Yeah, so if you're getting into Reaper paints, you're not choosing Reaper paints because of their ease of use, I would say. And it's got nothing to do with using it on the palette. That's fine. That's where it shines. But you know, from discontinued colors to chronically clogging nozzles, the labels that disappear after 3 or 4 weeks. Yeah, it's not for any of that. You're buying it because of the colors. I still think it's the most beautiful line of paint out there. It's silky on the palette. It's silky coming off the brush. It thins exquisitely. No matter how thin you make it, there's still a beautiful amount of tone there.
Colors, wow.
Yeah.
It's a great paint line, and some of the best. They have some of the best neon and bright colors out there. Like as far as like wanting, if you want paint that really pops, you don't want like paint that looks dull. Riotgrrl is definitely the way to go. Every time.
So, final letter grade, what would you give it?
I would give it a solid A.
It's a solid A, even with all those red marks on the paper. That's how good the colors are. All right, so that's our Riotgrrl paint review. If you would like us to review any of your hobby supplies that you manufacture, gaming aids, or model kits, you can get a hold of us here.
And if there are any other paint lines that any of you guys want us to review, we have a few, so we could do this.
Yeah, drop us a line. Let us know.
We also want to thank all of our amazing patrons on Patreon. It's because of you guys we can do this all the time. We love you all. And, you know, they give us also all these great ideas that we come up with for videos, so thank them for that. So we hope you guys enjoyed this video. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe.